in modern times, this is where it has all began. Back in 2014, in the room above me here called the Upper Room, or the place where Christian believers believe the Last Supper to be for Yeshua. The Pope of Rome actually came here and held a Mass in this upper room, also wearing his triple crown, trying to display to the world that he is the Son of David. In this particular message here, the mystery of David, I want to share with you a very interesting passage by the prophet Obadiah. He says, Ki ka'asher shetetem al har kodeshi, ve'ishitu kol hagoim tamid, ve'shatu, ve'lau, kalu, hayu. It is very fascinating to think that the prophet Obadiah saw many years ago, thousands of years ago, that a blasphemous thing would happen right here above the tomb of David. The prophet Obadiah, as you would say in English, he saw that there would be men, in Hebrew it would be the masculine plural, men only, that he would come and he would desecrate this holy site for Jewish people. And he would actually drink upon God's holy mountain. And what's fascinating more, though, as you read on in the passage there, Obadiah the prophet speaks about how that the nations, the Gentiles, would continually drink upon God's holy mountain, Mount Zion. And this mountain is holy. It is where the king of Israel, David, is buried, and it is a sacred site. And when it speaks literally here, as Obadiah actually says here, Ishatu kol hagoim tamid, they would continually, the Gentiles would continually to drink here. They come here, and the police actually remove our Jewish brothers from King David's tomb here so that they could have a mass inside of here. And yet the prophet here, he has seen this, and he has warned our people years and years before that this evil would happen in Jerusalem. We must stand up. And perhaps maybe we should know more of the mystery of David so that our people will know what to do. We cannot allow continually, especially the Pope of Rome, to come here and desecrate the tomb of David. Journey with me as I reveal more to you about the mystery of David. Ir David, the city of David. You know, we have to ask ourselves the question, why would the Israeli government permit the Pope of Rome to actually come to Israel? Maybe the upper room I would not have an issue with. It is a Christian site. But the fact that he comes and he puts on his triple crown, or perhaps it's not considered his triple crown, but nonetheless he puts on a crown showing that he is the King of David. You have to remember in 2013, the government of Israel gave the Pope of Rome an official seat there at the tomb of David. Giulio Miotti, on Israel National News, Arutz Shiva, published the article about this. Why this official place was given to the Pope of Rome? And then we have to ask ourselves the question why the government would allow not only for the Pope of Rome to have the Mass that he did, or the communion as it's called, in the upper room, but the fact that they go into the tomb of David a few weeks later and they remove the Jewish worshipers there and they hold a Mass there as well. This was a sign to Israel, as we stated earlier, of the words of the prophet Obadiah as it's in English, that the prophet Obadiah saw this thousands of years earlier, that there would be men only drinking upon God's holy mountain, and that the nations would continue to drink, the Gentiles, but God would make them swallow down. This is the time when God will bring judgment as well upon Rome, Mystery Babylon, as the Christians call it in the book of Revelation that was written by the Hebrew prophet Yochanan, John. You know, my Jewish brothers and sisters, I want to share with you, we must go further back in this story of David. We have to go further back. We have to examine, as we look here, and we can see plainly the momentous ruins that have been discovered here, even outside of the city of David, only proving the Israelite presence here in this country. I want to take you on a journey that will take you back during the times of these ruins and share with you what really happened. I think the mystery of David, we don't realize that the mystery of David actually is a sign to us as a Jewish people. A sign that has been completely overlooked. That's what I want to share with you now. Now we're here now on the Mount of Olives. Not the traditional Mount of Olives that you see that most of the Christians visit here, but we are actually really up here on top of the Mount of Olives that overlooks the old city. And this is the place when we're going to really look at the mystery of David and what is hidden there that we don't know about. What is there that we might be able to glean from history to understand why has the Pope of Rome come to Israel and defaced the tomb of David, defaced the very name of David? Well, that story is actually hidden in Absalom. Even as we see his burial place here in Israel, in the Kidron Valley right here behind me. So I want to take you back. I want to take you back thousands of years ago and as well consider the fact that history repeats itself. It's a wise old saying that we often hear, but it is very true, biblically speaking, that history often repeats itself. And as we go back and we look at Absalom, David's own son, who rejected his father as being the true anointed king and lifted himself up, then we begin to really get a picture of what is happening back in the past as well as even today. But let's go back even further. What got Absalom started to begin with? It was the defilement of his sister when the story really begins. His sister is defiled by his brother, and raped is really what happened to her. And Absalom, every right that one could have, was angry over what happened to his sister. So I don't hold that against him, that he actually, his love for his sister and being angry that she had been defiled by Amnon. I don't hold that against him. But what happens is that we find that later, once Absalom, of course, David banishes him from Jerusalem. He is angry at Absalom. He sends him out. Absalom leaves. But there comes a time where David's anger is finally appeased and he allows Absalom to return. Now, there's so many types in this, guys, it's not even funny. And I need to say for my Jewish brothers and sisters that may listen to this broadcast, I'm going to take you in all different types of directions, and bear with me, because truly the story of David is indeed a mystery that must be unraveled if we're to ever recognize who the Messiah is, to know who Mashiach is. The Mashiach that we are waiting for here in Israel. We must understand the mystery of David to be able to get this picture to pull together. So, Absalom, we know that he returns back. And that's kind of like Israel when she goes into exile into Babylon for 70 years and then returns again. God does have mercy, and David also has mercy, who is a type of the Messiah, has mercy upon Absalom and returns him home. When he comes back, though, he's trying to gain favor with his father. Absalom wants to return to Jerusalem. And he has, Joab is a friend that's also a friend with the king. And of course, Joab, we know the story, and you find this also in the book of 2 Samuel, beginning, actually it's good to just recap the entire prophecies of this, but if you begin even with chapter 14 and going into 15 there, we see so much that happens with Absalom. But I want to pick it up where Absalom comes back. Now, and you go to the 28th verse in chapter 14, Absalom lived 2 full years in Jerusalem and did not see the king's face. This is after David has already brought him back. And it's incredible right there. And I'm going to talk to you, my Jewish brothers and sisters, and I'm begging you. I'm going to speak to you about Yeshua, who many of the Christians today call Jesus of Nazareth, or Jesus the Messiah, Mashiach. And I want to take some parallels, and I beg you, I want you to stop. Don't get angry and hear me out for what I have to say. So if we look back and we considered Yeshua himself, I want to also think about these things and meditate upon it and prayerfully consider before the God of Israel if these things could really be true. So we find out that Joab, or Absalom, he's gone for 2 full years, or he's in Jerusalem, but 2 full years he's out of the presence of the king. He's not even allowed to be seen. And yet 2,000 years ago, on a hill here just to my left shoulder, the son of David, and I'm going to take it not in a positive, the son of David was killed, crucified by the Roman authority, but we have to share the guilt as well, my brothers. We did hand him over. The high priest handed him over for the crucifixion, so we share in this blame. But the Roman soldiers did hang him on the cross as far as the guys that did the dirty work. So 2 full years Absalom has been banished from the face of the king. Now we're going to look at this. The shadows are going to go forwards and backwards. When Absalom, then he wants to be able to see his father. He longs to see his father. And is that not the way it is today for the Jewish people? Is that not why you're gathered here to Israel? You're longing to want to see, the God of Israel. You're wanting to see him face to face as he came down and made himself known to Israel 3,500 years ago when Moses came and delivered our people from the Egyptians. Sure we do. But here's where the problem comes in. All right? Now, I'm going to show you the type because remember, just earlier we spoke about over there at the tomb of David how that the Pope of Rome came fulfilling Obadiah's prophecy, drinking upon God's holy mountain. Because there is a prince that shall come. Remember how Daniel speaks? He speaks about the Mashiach. He speaks about the anointed prince that comes, but he's cut off. But then he says there will be a prince that shall come. And he will be of the people who destroyed the temple and the sanctuary, which was Titus, under the command of Titus, the Roman general. Now I know the Syrians were involved in this as well. No doubt why Syria is being besieged today. And I have a feeling and a passion for the Syrian people that are caught up in these wars. I'm not justifying the war, but clearly they were involved, as well as the Romans. But Titus led the charge against our people and destroyed the city and the sanctuary. But Daniel the prophet said clearly that a prince shall come who would be of those people, a Roman. The Pope of Rome who came here, his family are Italians. His whole ancestry is from Rome. He is a descendant of Esau. He came and he drank upon God's holy mountain. And then the nations, the Gentiles, all the other churches that he had with him began to also hold communion services on God's holy mountain, which should never have been done. Especially in light that he put his crown on to show that he is King Mashiach when he's not. All right, but Absalom does a very interesting thing. If you look in chapter 15, then it says in verse 3, then Absalom would say, or let me back up a little bit. Now it came about, verse 1, after this, that Absalom provided for himself a chariot and horses and 50 men as runners before him. And Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. And when any man had suit to come to the king for judgment, Absalom would call to him and say, from what city are you? And would say, your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel. Then Absalom would say to him, see, your claims are good and right, but no man listens to you on the part of the king. Moreover, Absalom would say, that one would appoint me judge in the land, then every man who has any suit or cause would come to me, and I would give him justice. Now, there's a twofold revelation in this story right here. Speaking in modern days, speaking from the time of 325 of Nicaea, Rome, we can see, notice, remember it's 2 years now, for 2,000 years nearly, the Catholic Church has longed to be appointed to be over this city here, and now there's even suspicion that the Pope of Rome is going to come here to do a secret communion. I believe he might come here during this Mekadeshit meeting. We're going to that later. And there is a slight possibility that may be so, in a secret meeting where no one else knows about it. But one thing's for sure, he will try to come because he wants to be here. He wants to take the place as Absalom did. But also, and this I might speak to the Christian viewers that are listening. Doesn't the Pope of Rome try to tell you that there's no, even though the Bible says that there's only one mediator between man and God, and that's the man Christ Jesus or Yeshua HaMashiach, But instead, you have put this Pope of Rome in his place like Absalom, and now you are saying that, he stands in the way of the gate. Didn't the Bible say that in the New Testament that Peter was given the keys to the kingdom? And now the Pope of Rome, the two keys on his flag, he holds the keys and he says he's the only one that can unlock the gate, but the keys actually apply to political and spiritual powers. He's trying to take control of the world. All right? Now, Absalom does this. But he says in his heart, then Absalom would say to him, after he says, oh, that one would appoint me judge in the land. Then every man who has any suit or cause would come to me, and I would give him justice. When a man came near, he prostrated himself before him, and he would put on this, manner Absalom dealt with all Israel who came to the king of judgment. So Absalom stole away the hearts of the men of Israel. My Jewish brothers and sisters, let me just say to you today, that is happening again. The Pope of Rome is trying to steal the hearts of the lawless of Israel. And I might remind you, my Jewish brothers, in Daniel chapter 11, verse 14, Daniel, halfway through the verse, he speaks about the sons of the lawless. I know in King James, I think they call it the robbers of thy people. The sons of the lawless of your people. The angel speaking to Daniel. They will try to nasu, marry the vision. What vision are they trying to marry, my brother, sister? They're trying to marry, and I wasn't planning on this, but we got to bring it out, and then I'll come right back to David again. Let me turn over with you to Daniel, and let's take a serious look at what Daniel says here. Because Daniel, when we go over to Daniel, and let me first, before I jump over to chapter 9, let me read to you again. Uvane paratzi amcha, the sons of the lawless of your people, the angel says to Daniel. Inasu lahamid hazon ve na shalu. They will try to marry the vision, but they're going to fall. They're going to fail at what they're trying to marry. But what vision is Daniel speaking of? It's the very vision that we have been looking for as a people, as a Jewish nation, of the return of the Mashiach in Daniel 9:24. Okay, 70 weeks have been determined or decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. They're trying to marry this vision of Daniel. This is why there's this big Mekodeshet. Mekodeshet, as you know in Hebrew, it does mean sacred, but as an adjective we use it as betrothed. They're trying to marry, as Daniel said, nasu, trying to marry this vision. And it's not of God. It is not of God. It is Absalom all over again. Absalom, like the Pope of Rome, is standing at the gates. And he doesn't want anyone to get in. Now let's go to back up. Let's really begin to look at this story here. I want to share it with you so bad I can't stand it. Absalom, like a type of Israel, we've looked at it kind of just a little brief in modern times, and I have many videos you guys can go and watch and see the different revelations that God has given me for you. And for the Christian believers that want to know the deeper meanings as well. But let's take a look at Absalom in light of our own history. Absalom did not recognize that his father was indeed the anointed king of Israel. He failed to realize that, even though his name was Absalom, my father is peace. He failed to recognize that. And so what he did is he secretly began to try to overthrow his father. And when Yeshua, 2,000 years ago, came here to this city here, the son of David, he was not recognized by our people. Like Absalom, he was not recognized, but yet David loved him. And what did they do? They began to find a way to do away with him, just as Absalom, his own father, he wants to do away with him, willing to kill him. Now, when the word got to David that Absalom was doing this, David refused. David was not going to allow the bloodshed to hit the city. David told his men, we're not going to do it. Now, what's interesting though, is in the story of David, what's fascinating in 2 Samuel here, David, so much like Yeshua, and this is what I want you to think about. You have to think about Jesus here when it comes to this. All right, Jesus 2,000 years ago, his disciples were willing to put the rebellion down. Just as we see with David, David's men says to David, they were the great fighters with him. They said, we'll do whatever you want, King. We can put this rebellion down. Peter did the same. Did he not pull his sword and cut the high priest's guard, he cut his ear off? They were ready to fight for Yeshua, but Yeshua said, no, this is not the time. This isn't the place. He said, can I not call 10 legions of angels right now, and would not my Father not give them to me? But Yeshua said, no, we're not going to put it down. And what did Yeshua do? Yeshua actually, in another passage, sat right here on the Mount of Olives, overlooking the old city, and he weeps over Jerusalem and says, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I would have hovered you as a mother would her own brood, but you would not. He said, now your house is left to you desolate until you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord, Hashem. Now, I would like to show you the other side then. What did David do? David says to his men, we're not going to put down the rebellion, we're going to leave. Now, we know the story. He crosses the river Jordan. Yeshua is put to death here, crossing what we call the spiritual river of Jordan. Isn't it right? And so David, he takes and he comes across the river with his men. He walks barefoot. They all cover their heads. They come here on the Mount of Olives. He turns around. They sit down and they weep. David weeps over Israel, just like Yeshua did. And there were two priests. I want to share that with you. The priest at the time was Zadok and Abiathar. They came out of the city along with the rest of the priests. They were going to go with David, the ark and everything. David said, no, return it back to the city. Return it back. He says, when I return, if God has given me favor, I will return in peace. And he wanted it to be there. Didn't Jesus himself say that he was coming back as well? And he's going to come back in peace, isn't it right? Now, watch the story though. David comes up, they weep over Jerusalem. But before he leaves, David left behind 10 concubines and he said, care for my house in my absence. And those concubines, in the Christian Bible, we find 10 virgins. They are espoused to Christ or to Yeshua, engaged, betrothed. Mekodeshet. Not the Mekodeshet that the Pope is trying to do, like Absalom, and overthrow the true king of Israel, which is Yeshua HaMashiach. But he left them behind. He said, care for my house. And then one of Absalom's men encourages him to defile them and do it publicly. Are we not seeing that today? And let me say this to the Christian people listening right now. You represent those 10 virgins. You represent the 10 concubines of David. And regardless of how the Jewish people have treated you, you were given a command to care for his house. But notice though, it was Absalom's servant that says to him to defile these women and do it publicly. And the Pope of Rome has done the same. He's the one that has caused the tension here in Israel and in this entire region. He's the one causing these issues and these problems, just like Absalom did. Now, they take and they leave, and they go up on the mountain. Now, when they get up here, as I said, the priest, Zadok and Abiathar, they came up here. They are like the two witnesses. David sends them back along with their two sons. And that's a message for the Christian community there. Moses and Elijah, and yet the two witnesses are two other anointed, but with the same spirit. They're sons, in other words. But they sent them back. He sends them back to bring word to him, to let him know when they were in one mind and one accord. This is what we find out, my Jewish brothers and sisters. There is a prophecy. It's actually written in Obadiah as well, that saviors will come up upon the Mount of Zion and shall judge the Mount of Esau. That's also speaking in the mystery of David, what the Pope of Rome did here on Mount Zion. He has taken the Mount Zion and he's turned it into the Mount of Esau, because Esau is the Romans of today, and the Pope of Rome as an Edomite has come here, defaced the property here, and he's held a communion there. But God will send 2 witnesses according to Revelation 11, and they will judge, according to what Obadiah says, they will judge Mount Zion that has become that Mount of Esau. They bring judgment upon Rome. And as Revelation refers back, it's the 2 olive branches on either side of the golden lampstand that is written in the book of Zechariah. It is also what Daniel speaks about in chapter 12, when Daniel says, the angel says, seal it up. It's not going to be known until the end time. Well, you're living in the end times right now, and the book is being made known to you now. Daniel. And again, maybe we should turn to Daniel there for a moment to look at this. So many of these passages, guys, I am paraphrasing because I am speaking to you out here in the open on the Mount of Olives, and it's not as easy for me just to be able to share with you every little thing there. But let me just show you here. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, 2 others were standing, one on this bank of the river and the other on that bank of the river. And one said to the man dressed in linen, which happens to be the Mashiach, who was above the waters of the river, how long will it be until the end of these wonders? And I heard a man dressed in linen who was above the waters of the river, as he said, his right hand and his left foot, and his left toward heaven, and swore by him who lives forever and ever that it would be for a time's time and a half a time. 3.5 years. 3.5 years. And who are those 2 men? They're a type of Zadok and Abiathar. They are the type of the 2 witnesses of Revelation 11 that will come and bring word to you of these very things that I even share with you now. All right? Now, David, though, let's go a little deeper. David, he begins to go over the mountain here, and he heads into the land there, and a Benjamite meets him out there called Shimei. And Shimei meets David. And he begins to throw stones at his men and throwing dust up in the air. And he calls David a son of Belial, he's just angry with him and spitting on David. And his men ready, one of his men said, that dog's head stay upon him. Let me cut his head off. And David again said, don't do it. Just paraphrasing, don't do it. God has told him to do it. Now, why would Shimei do that? And why? The odd thing is, the name Shimei to begin with, Shimei was a Benjamite. So let's go a little further back. As a Benjamite, remember the story of Joseph and how his brothers sold him out? 30 pieces of silver Yeshua was sold out for. 20 pieces of silver was Joseph sold out for. I know you know the story. But when they first come down, they don't bring Benjamin, his natural brother. But the other brothers come. See, there has to be atonement. There has to be a reconciliation for sin. And if Daniel prophesied of it, you got to find out what sin you've committed. Every time our people have been dispersed from this land, we were dispersed because of the sins that we have committed. 2,000 years ago when the Romans came in here, don't think that we were dispersed because we were doing so righteous by offering all the animals to God. If that was the case, then we should have never been dispersed. But there was something that we did wrong, and what we did wrong was when we crucified Yeshua HaMashiach, the Messiah of God, upon this mountain over here. And when Joseph's brothers come down, what was God doing with Joseph's brothers? He takes with them. He doesn't reveal himself. Notice he doesn't reveal himself. You're here in the homeland, but God has not revealed himself. Yeshua has never revealed himself to you yet as a nation. But he gives you your corn. First calls you spies. You're called every kind of name in the land for being here. Every Christian practically that's against the Israel being here as a nation, there's a lot of Christians. Let me clarify that. There's millions of Christians that love Israel and believe that you're here to be able to see the Messiah. But there's many of them also that are against you, that boycott you and everything else. And Joseph accuses you of being spies. And he gives you what you ask for, the corn. He blesses you even though you're here and don't recognize him. He blesses you anyway. He puts your money back in the sack. That's for what you did to Joseph himself. But then you come back, you go back home, you go on your way home, you stopped in a little cave or at a hotel, a Babylon, at the inn. But when they go to feed the little donkey or the little donkeys that you got there and the horses some provender, one of the brothers saw the money in his bag and he began to recognize, oh my God, we've done something wrong. He goes and tells his brothers, but you want to know why he found the money at the inn where he did? Because you had rejected Yeshua 2,000 years ago when he was yet in his own mother's womb, and he went to the hotel and there was no room for him, and so he had to be born in a stable. Do you know when Joseph finally comes down, I'm going to shorten it to save time, but I have longer videos you can listen to this on. Even in the book Yam Suf, the last chapter, you can read it. It speaks of Israel's redemption. But Joseph, when Benjamin comes down, Joseph, when he gets ready to send them back out for the second time, he returns the money again. That's now for what you did when you sold out Yeshua. Judas sold him out for 30 pieces of silver. It puts the sin on our whole people, guys. And don't tell me it don't put the sin on the whole people. That's why God gave you the story in Joshua about the Babylonian garment and the gold wedge. And look how many innocent men died for that Babylonian garment and that gold wedge. That's why you see that there. Then what happens? He takes the cup. Joseph takes the cup and he puts it in Benjamin's bag. Benjamin wasn't guilty for selling out his brethren. And today, the Jews that are here in Israel today, you say, we've not been guilty of selling out our brother. We didn't sell out Yeshua. And many of you are actually claiming that yes, he was a Jew, he was a Hebrew, and we accept that. So yes, now you're willing to call him a brother, but you say, we were not the ones guilty of his blood. But that cup is in your bag. And what are you going to do with the cup? God put it there for a reason. So now we're standing here with the communion cup. Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth, comes there in the upper room where the Pope desecrates it, comes there in that upper room. And he holds the communion with his disciples. And one, Judas, he betrays him. Judas betrays him. The very one that drinks with him. And the one that is drinking upon the mountain today is betraying Israel once again and selling you out to the Romans again. History is only repeating itself, friends. So, we come back. And before I go back, remember, then as Yeshua is being condemned, the house of Judah is here. The house of Israel is already in exile. But it's the Benjamites, tribe of Benjamin, tribe of Judah, the Levites, and the Samaritans. Those that were the little remnant left of the house of Israel that had been women been raped by the Syrians. They were here. Yeshua came and he spread the gospel to all. And then what happens though? The Benjamites and the Judites, the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, began to cry out, let his blood be upon us and upon our children. And though you meant it as a derogatory statement, I say you because it was our fathers that were there, though we meant it as a derogatory statement, my fathers were there as well. I am born of the tribe of Ephraim. My mother from the tribe or the house of Judah, I don't know which tribe, but she's Ashkenazi. So yes, we were there. My family was there as well. But yet, his own blood is what redeemed us. When that Roman soldier pierced him in his side, do you not know it was a sign to us like it was when God commanded Moses when they first come in the wilderness journey and God says to Moses, we're all complaining that we're thirsting to death and that we don't have any drink, we're dying, and God says to Moses, take the elders of Israel, go there to the rock and judge and bring, see they came there as a witness and told Moses to smite the rock that it bring forth its waters in the sight of all of Israel. And that's exactly what happened 2,000 years ago, not just the 3,500 years ago, but when the rock was smitten, the water came out, Israel drank and Israel lived. 2,000 years ago, it was a prophecy that the rock, Yeshua, the Mashiach, would be smitten and that water would flow from him as well. And when the Roman soldier pierced his side, his blood and his water separated, showing that the waters of life that we had rejected at the Garden of Eden through Adam and Eve's sin, was now being restored to us as a people. And God gave that beautiful shadow and the type of Moses when he smote the rock, and also when God told Moses 2 years later, speak to the rock. But Moses smote it in anger. Everything, every shadow and type is here, my brothers. How can we miss it? Now, we move forward again. That woman at the well, remember the one, you don't know about that maybe, but the woman at the well in the New Testament, she said, sir, if you'd give me a drink, because he says, bring me a drink, woman, and she says, oh, you don't even know me. And she says, but the well's deep and you don't have nothing to get it. He says, if you knew who I was, you would ask me for a drink and I'd give you waters that would flow from the belly. And she didn't believe him, but when he told her that she had 5 husbands and the one she's living with now was not her husband, then she believed him. That was a sign. Do you not know that even Rabbi Orly stated that the human body is just like the temple that's set right back here on the Temple Mount. And the Holy of Holies is where the human heart sits right there. And when you were offering those sacrifices and killing them, God wanted a pure oblation. He says to you through Jeremiah, Isaiah, all of them, He did not want the animals killed. That was never His perfect will. He permitted it. I agree with you. He permitted it. Ezekiel tells us that in chapter 20 as well, the prophet Ezekiel. It was permitted. But God wanted a pure oblation from your heart. But even though the temple was set up like that and the altar where they killed the animals and they had the water, they used to use the water that would wash it out. And that water would take and wash the water and the blood out, and coming out the side of the temple was the blood and water. There's your Messiah. And let me tell you something. I say this to the Christian people as well. God holds our people responsible. That's why there's a reconciliation for iniquity. We killed the Messiah. Now, indeed, He had to die in order for that life to come out of Him, so that the Holy Spirit, the life, that waters of life could come back upon us. Just like the children of Israel had to drink the water that came from the rock. If they didn't drink the water that came from the rock, they would die. And if we don't drink the water that comes from the true rock, the true Mashiach, we're going to die spiritually. So, he's rejected. We see all this happen. David as well, rejected by Shimei. He crosses the river Jordan with his men. Absalom is determined that he's going to kill his father so that the story of his father cannot come back to haunt him later. The Jews come up with every kind of excuse about Yeshua. Let's just pay off the soldiers. He really just escaped. He never died, and he went somewhere. Every kind of thing, every kind of plot you could think of, we tried to do. So did Absalom. Well, he does go out to try to fight David's men eventually. Absalom is killed in battle. Israel is dispersed in 70 AD. Doesn't happen at first, but he is dispersed in 70 AD, and our people are gone to the rest of the world, even as the prophets prophesied would happen to us. But it also is a prophecy that we would return to the land. I agree with that. And Zechariah says that the house of Judah would come home first, so it doesn't lift up its heel against the house of Israel. Why? We've got to recognize where we went wrong, friends. But let me share this with you as I get ready to close here. Absalom dies, and when he dies, David weeps like never before. And David, when he's weeping, his own men begin to wonder, why are you weeping so much? What's such a big deal? And they got angry with him. And when the believers of Yeshua, the Jewish people that believed that He was the Messiah, when they were weeping, what did you do? What did you do to Mary and Martha? You slapped them around, and what are you crying for over him? Then David, when the word comes back to David that Absalom is dead, David begins to weep and mourn over Absalom. Absalom's death is a type of 70 AD when Israel goes into captivity. And the Romans and the Syrians come here and they besiege the city and they destroyed the temple and the sanctuary and they destroyed the city. You not know that was a day of weeping, and David weeps so bitterly and wept so hard for his son. And finally, even his men said, you bring a reproach. This is the man that brought the rebellion against you. Why are you weeping for him like this? And yet there's so many Christians today that even sit there and say, why do you Christians love these Jews? They were the ones that crucified your Messiah. The ones that are saying that need to have their eyes opened as well. You think the Jewish people are blind? Let me tell you something. There's so many Christians that are blind, it's not even funny. David wept over Absalom's death for a reason. Because he was a type of the Mashiach. And Yeshua also said here, and he wept over Jerusalem. Because he knew that they would be carried away. He knew that they would die. He said, your house is left to you desolate. Not only was their house physically here left desolate, but also the heart where he could not fill them with the Holy Spirit, that house was left desolate as well. And so David, just like Absalom, he wept over Jerusalem. David wept over Absalom because he loved him. He was a type of Israel that would reject their own father, Avshalom, his father, his peace. They would reject, the 2,000 years ago, Jews would reject Yeshua. Now we come down though. Zadok and Abiathar the priest. There comes some meetings that happen with David. David is getting ready to come back. He's about ready to make his return. And I want to read to you about this a little bit. In chapter 19, verse 8, it says here, so the king arose and sat in the gate when they told all the people, saying, behold, the king is sitting in the gate. Speaking of David. Then all the people came before the king. Now Israel had fled each to his own tent, and all the people were quarreling throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, the king delivered us from the hand of our enemies and saved us from the hand of the Philistines, but now he has fled out of the land of Absalom. However, Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. Now then, why are you silent about bringing the king back? Remember, there's going to be a judgment. The deliverers, the saviors, and Obadiah's last verse there says that they will come up and judge the Mount of Esau. The Edomites, the descendants of Esau that are running the Roman Catholic Church will come under judgment one day. And it'll be the end of it. And these people, all these tribes that are dispersed, that's just interesting, isn't it? Now, King David sent Zadok and Abiathar the priest, saying, speak to the elders of Judah, saying, why are you the last to bring back the king to his house? Since the world of all Israel has come to the king, even to his house, you are my brothers, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? You see, the house of Israel, it is true that many of them are today Christians believing in Yeshua. But did you notice, my Christian brothers, you're all quarreling amongst one another? If you're not part of this denomination or that denomination, you can't agree with anybody else. You need as well those two witnesses to set it in order. But then David says to them, he sends Zadok and Abiathar, the two witnesses, to the priest, saying to the elders of Judah, saying, why are you the last to bring the king back to his house, since the word of all Israel has come to the king, even to his house? You are my brothers, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? Say to Amzah, are you not my bone and my flesh, my God, to do so to me? And more also, if you will not be commander of the army before me continually in the place of Joab. Thus he turned the hearts of all the men of Judah as one man, so that they sent word to the king, saying, return you and all your servants. Then the king turned and came as far as the Jordan and Judah, and came to Gilgal in order to meet the king, to bring the king across the Jordan. Friends, that's what it is. Yeshua is coming back. The Messiah is going to return. But he's got to have the two witnesses, Zadok and Abiathar, Moses and Elijah, to come and to get the house in one mind and one accord before he can do it. That's where we're at right now. And do you know who meets him down at the river? You know who meets him? It's Shimei. The very Benjamite that cursed him meets him down at the river. All right, so let me just share with you then. Let's go then to Zechariah the prophet. We're going to go to chapter 12. Now, what does Zechariah say? The Lord also saved the tents of Judah first, so that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem will not be magnified above Judah. That's why you're here in the homeland. I don't care about the Rothschilds that bought land and all this Zionist things that are going on. There was a true reason for the remnant of Israel to come home. God only used the evil for good. And that day the Lord will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the one who is feeble among them, that the David will be, among them, and that day will be like David, and the house of David will be like God, like the angel of the Lord before them. Isn't it interesting? David is mentioned again. And in that day I will set up out to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. We're in that day, friends. I will pour out on the house of David, on the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the spirit of grace and supplication, so that they will look upon me whom they have pierced, thrust through. I know it's thrust through. It's actually speaking not of the nails per se, but when the Roman soldier drove the spear into his side. But even the hands are thrust through with the big spikes. It can be either way. And they will weep bitterly over him, the bitter weeping of a firstborn. In that day there will be a great mourning in Jerusalem, like the mourning of Hadramimon, and in the plain of Megiddo. The land will mourn, every family itself, the family of the house of David by itself, their wives and by themselves, the family of the house of Nathan by itself, and their wives by themselves, the family of the house of Levi by itself, and their wives by themselves, and the family of the Shemites by itself, and their wives by themselves. All the families that remain, every family by itself, and their wives by themselves. The Samaritans, the house of Judah, Levites, and Benjamites, just like in David. Shimei was the one that met him there, and he fell on his face and he says, "Forgive me for what I did to you." He was a Benjamite, and today Shimei, according to Zechariah, will also fall down. And all the families of the house of Judah, and even the Samaritans,